David here with Figboot on pens, back again with another video. Over the years of doing these videos, and especially when I solicit questions for Q&As, I get asked a lot of the same questions over and over again. I have answered these questions in Q&As as well as in interviews and other videos, but I don't expect every viewer to have seen everything I have ever created, so I can understand why they might not have seen the answer to their particular comment question. I have a gaming YouTube channel that I watch, and that creator came out with a series of videos called Don't Ask Me These Questions Again, which addressed a lot of the common questions he received. And I thought I would do the same thing. But saying don't ask me these questions again really isn't my style, so I am calling this Figboot FAQ. So when someone asks me one of these questions again, I can simply direct them to this video and the answers will be contained within. Basically asked and answered. Okay, how about some questions? First one, what are the origins of the Figboot name? It actually comes from a book. The Canadian author and illustrator Graham Romeo has written a number of very humorous books. In my opinion, his Bigfoot trilogy of In Me Own Words, Me Write Book, and I Not Dead are hilarious. Like most edgy comedy, it can be polarizing. Either you will read these books and laugh out loud on virtually every page, or you'll feel it's the dumbest thing you've ever read. In Me Write Book, it tells such stories as how Bigfoot auditioned for Sesame Street and how he became a sumo wrestler in Japan. One page has his online dating profile, and on that profile, his username is Figboot. Technically, it's Figboot_2001, but you get the idea. And Figboot is the moniker that I've used for a long time when it comes to usernames and character names in games and things along those lines. It's something that usually isn't taken when you have to create a unique username, so that's nice. Though there is a little purple dinosaur from the Strawberry Shortcake cartoons called Figboot as well. I liked the books and illustrations so much that I contacted Graham a number of years ago and commissioned a piece of original art. This is the piece he created for me, Bigfoot poking a beehive with a stick. It is one of my prized possessions and hangs in my office at work. I absolutely love it. Okay, next question. How did you get started in fountain pens? I had a coworker who one day showed me his Lamy All-Star and thought that I might like to try out a fountain pen. He wasn't really into fountain pens, he just happened to use one on occasion. So it really wasn't an overt penablement. He told me about a particular online retailer and I checked it out. I had no idea what I was doing. I think I was just looking at the Lamy All-Stars since that's what he had, and I picked this one up right here, one in silver. It's funny thinking back about how naive I was. I really had no idea what I was buying. But I liked the pen, and it became my daily pen at work for about a year. I didn't have any bottled ink, so I would just use cartridges, and then reorder cartridges from the same retailer whenever I was running low. But the bug really hadn't bitten me, and I really never looked to see what else was out there. Then I happened to be on vacation with my family in Paris, and I was walking around the underground mall next to the Louvre, and I happened upon a stationery store called Delphonics. I saw a display of Lamy Safaris, I recognized them by the distinct boxes, and I picked up this black Safari. So now I had two pens. Fast forward another 6 months and I was part of an annual Reddit Secret Santa gift exchange. I mentioned to my Santa I had a couple of fountain pens and they gifted me a Parker Urban in a gift set, which actually included a bottle of ink. I thought it was pretty cool, and that was my first exposure to bottled ink, and there was just something really satisfying about filling the cartridge with my bottle of black Parker Quink. Then again, for about a year or so, I was content with my 3 pens. Then one day, I really don't even know what triggered it. I had a thought that turned out to be very dangerous, and that was, I wonder what other pens are out there. And that's when I started searching and quickly became overwhelmed. There were so many pens out there that I really had no idea what to choose. I was really afraid of making a bad buying decision, but in the grand scheme of things, I really had no idea what I liked and disliked about pens. I just knew that I liked the 3 I had. After tons of research, I decided to purchase this pen here, a TWSBI Diamond 580. And this pen is the one that really kicked off my pen journey, because when I received this pen and began to use it, I thought to myself, this pen is really, really cool. and then proceeded to jump off the deep end. And that's how my fountain pen journey began. Okay, next question. What is your day job and what do you do for a living? I work as a data analyst for a Fortune 500 company. My main responsibilities revolve around creating internal and external facing reporting, financial forecasting, and database management. I am basically the keeper of the data. If you need an answer to something, then I'm generally the person you need to speak with. I have a Six Sigma black belt, so process improvement is a big part of my job as well. Essentially, my job is to make other people look good. I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I provide fellow management with analytics, reporting, and forecasting so they can be better informed as to what's going on with our business. I provide our customer-facing managers with slide decks and performance metrics that they present to customers. I make presentation to customers as well. I basically live and breathe Excel and PowerPoint on a daily basis. And how do I use my analog fountain pens every day in a very digital world? That's another question I get a lot. I need to take lots of notes, and I also use my pens to create daily to-do lists. While I could manage my to-do list digitally, there is something satisfying about physically creating a list of what you plan to accomplish in the day and then crossing it off as you do so. Much more satisfying than typing it out and then checking a box with your computer mouse. Okay. Here are 3 questions I received, mostly via email, that I really don't need to see again. And those questions would be, could you identify this pen for me? Could you please authenticate this Mont Blanc pen? And which is better, pen X or pen Y? I really cringe whenever I receive any of these questions. I strive to be very polite in my responses, but I will rarely, if ever, actually answer those questions. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of nameless vintage pens from the 1950s. I'm not going to put myself or my reputation at risk by telling you that for 100% certainty that Mont Blanc you have in your possession is authentic. And I'm not an authentication service, and even if so, verifying something via pictures is extremely difficult. And when it comes to recommendations, I could potentially tell you what pen I prefer, but asking for a definitive, this pen is better than this one, is an extremely subjective decision based on your own personal tastes and preferences. So I generally politely reply to these emails, either directing folks to another resource like the Fountain Pen Network for pen identification, or Mont Blanc store or their customer service for authentication services. Or I explain to folks how determining if a Mont Blanc 149 or a Pelican M1000 is a better fit for them, that it is really a matter of perspective. I can understand why people continue to ask those questions. They're just looking for answers, and they think I might be the person to be able to provide those answers to them. But yes, it would not hurt my feelings if I never see any of those emails again. It's like, how politely can I respond to this person telling them that I'm not going to provide them with the info that you're looking for? Okay, another question is, I have X amount of a budget, what pen should I buy? This question is closely related to the 3 I just mentioned, but I do have many different top 10 videos that cover my pen recommendations in a number of different price ranges. Selecting a pen is something which can widely vary depending on your own personal tastes and preferences, so I would recommend checking out those top 10 lists and the top 10 lists from other content creators in order to get as much information about a wide variety of pens in your price range so you can make an educated decision. The next question is, why do reviewers do reverse writing in reviews? That's because there are many users who draw with their fountain pens, and writing with the nibs inverted can typically produce a much thinner line with the same ink, so you don't need to ink up a second pen to achieve that thinner line. Next question, how do you keep track of your pens? I have something which I call my everyday carry fountain pen log, which I use to track my daily fountain pen use. If you search YouTube for everyday carry fountain pen log, you will see 2 videos where I demonstrate how to use the Excel tool as well as where it can be downloaded for free. It's a tool I use to make sure that I'm rotating through my collection. It's something I made several years ago. If I made the tool again, I would probably create it totally differently, but it works just fine, so why change it? I've had folks request I make changes to the tool in order to meet their specific needs. While the workbook is protected, it is not password protected. So if you have a certain level of Excel understanding, feel free to make any improvements or additions to the workbook to fit your own personal needs. It's one of those things, if you know enough about Excel to unlock the spreadsheet, then you probably have enough knowledge to backwards engineer the workbook to see how I put everything together. It's a barrier to entry, if you will. But please, I do not need to be your Excel tech support. I have had people ask me for support in why things weren't working correctly when the workbook was used in OpenOffice or when they tried to import it into Google Sheets. That's because while those programs do similar things, OpenOffice and Google Sheet are different programs and not all the formulas and functions translate between those three programs. Next question. How many pens do you have in your collection? I never answer that question. If I do, I always say way too many. I understand the curiosity, but I don't feel the measure of someone involved in this hobby should be the size of their collection. Someone who has one pen can enjoy this hobby as much as someone who has 1,000. And that person with a single pen shouldn't feel like they are any less of a member of this community because they don't have enough pens. I also feel that quality is more important than quantity. I would prefer to have a smaller collection of amazing pens than a larger collection of regrettable purchases and mediocre pens. Next up, will you be at insert pen show name here? I typically try to make it to 3 shows a year: the Atlanta show in April, the Triangle show in June, and the DC show in August. This past year, I also made it out to the San Francisco show in late August. I really had a fun time at the San Francisco show, but it's a bit tough to take time off of work at the beginning of the month and travel to DC and then turn around later in the month and do the same thing for San Francisco. I'm not certain when I will double dip in August like that again, but I do highly recommend attending the San Francisco show if you can. It is a very well-run show and a lot of fun. It has a well-earned moniker of being the fun show. Okay, what is with the Rubik's Cube? What is your fastest time? I do have a number of cubes. I usually keep them over here, over my shoulder. I've been solving cubes since they first became popular when I was much younger. I began putting cubes in the back just to have something mildly interesting in the background. Sometimes I will arrange the cubes to represent the flag that's associated with the product I'm reviewing, or sometimes I might have them represent some physical attribute about the pen being reviewed. More often than not, the cubes are just back there in a random design. So sometimes they mean something and other times they do not. I do have an entire video where I created a large mosaic out of 600 cubes. I created logos of different fountain pen companies, as well as some other things. My favorite cube is a Shangshu Aurora. I have a few of those. My fastest time is rather slow in comparison to other folks who consider themselves to be speed cubers. I really wouldn't say I'm a speed cuber. My best time is 48.6 seconds. I'm typically hovering around a minute or a minute and 15. One of these days, I'd like to get that under 30 seconds, but it would really require for me to learn a completely different algorithm. With the older method that I use to solve, it really requires more moves than current methodologies. So with the method I use, unless I get really lucky, I really can't get much faster. There's a bit of discomfort factor, though, of the seemingly daunting task of unlearning what I have done for decades. I can pretty much solve a cube without really thinking about it. It's just muscle memory at this point. But the idea of throwing that all away and starting over from scratch is a bit scary. One of these days, I will do it, though. I need to, if I ever want to get my time down to sub 30 seconds, which I think would be nice. Let's see, a couple of more questions. One is, if you could give yourself one piece of advice to start your collection, what would that be? I would say that the best piece of advice I can give is to make sure that you don't go too fast. And what I mean by that is that you will go through something I would call the acquisition phase, where you are buying anything and everything you can get your hands on because you're excited and you're continually making new discoveries. I would recommend slowing down a bit and really enjoying the pens that you have before getting penvy over something that you saw someone else pick up on Instagram. There are always going to be new and exciting pens hitting the market, but I feel it's important to spend enough time in each phase of your collection journey so that you can appreciate them better. Spend time with beginner pens. Spend time with the next level pens. If you go too quickly, you can tend to skip over entire genres. And then sometimes it's tough to go backwards in your pen journey to better appreciate each of those genres, and understand what they bring to the table. And the more time you spend with the lesser expensive pens, you'll have a better understanding of your taste and preferences. So when you're purchasing something a little bit more expensive, the chances you will pick up something you will like will be greater because you know better what works for you and what you like and what you don't like in a pen. Okay, where should I sell my pens? I typically recommend 3 places. The Fountain Pen Network Classifieds, on Reddit, there is a Pen Swap subreddit, and then on the Pen Addict Slack channel, there is a sell and trade area. There are other places to sell your pens, but those are the 3 places I typically recommend. Okay, 2 more questions. What paper do you use for your writing samples? It is Rhodia 80-gram paper. I like these top-bound staple pads. I use them every day at work, and I find that it's really good, consistent paper for my needs. And they're around $9 a pad. And then for the final question of this video, many people ask how I store pens. I have 3 different videos on my channel dedicated to this subject. I use a combination of a number of storage solutions, which I detail in those videos. I'll put links to those in the notes below so you can check them out if you would care to see some storage ideas for yourself. Okay, I think that's enough questions from now. Who knows, maybe I'll need to do a part 2 down the line in order to get to some more commonly asked questions. But, I think this compilation here is a good start. Until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.